Hey guys, today I want to show you my process for creating this Raikou animation using Procreate and After Effects. Before I get started on anything, I need to make sure that I have an idea of what I actually want to do. So after choosing Raikou as the subject, I wanted to animate it like a cat that's doing that hissing, angry, curved back pose thing, except instead of its hair raising on end, it's a giant bolt of lightning that strikes it and makes it seem really intimidating. I really wanted the location to be somewhere rainy, obviously, and somewhere where Raikou can actually possibly exist in the world, so, not like the Arctic or anything like that, and this is the reference that I went with. With all this in mind, I create this rough drawing, really focusing on the contrast of rainy blues with Raikou's yellow and seeing how the values will work. I don't want to spend too much time on the stage, but before moving on, I already know that I don't like the sunny lighting on Raikou or the yellow leaves on the trees, and should instead focus on making the scene a lot darker and rainier, leaving it up to the lightning strike to highlight Raikou. Lines help me quickly define what shapes I want. I usually employ line work in the mid and foreground, but here I wait to define the leaves and other smaller details. The backgrounds are also lineless because I think it helps sell the illusion of distance and encourages me to be a little bit looser when I go in and paint it. This process takes a long time for me, partly because I work in multiple layers to make sure that every subject of the scene can be moved and separated independently. Since I'm inspired by watercolor art and the scene is very rainy, I make sure to only use watercolor brushes for the background. I'm not trying to make this piece look like an exact watercolor painting, this is just the angle that I want to approach it with. Throughout the process, I keep these inspirations in mind and they influence some of the decisions that I make. I make sure the mountains aren't too blue, check values so that everything reads well, including testing how different wetstones might ultimately look, and the wetstones in the foreground actually concerned me the most. It's hard to accurately predict reflections, and drawing the precise textures of the rocks would also be a challenge, but I decided not to make them super shiny and instead just imply wetness with a few lighter tones. Wet surfaces also have a lot of contrast, so I make sure to add more highlights and shadows. I paint the leaves, scatter some pebbles, and readjust the background to make it less symmetric, while also adding the side of the mountain that Raikou is on, just to make this area feel like it's part of a larger mountain, like the ones in the background. Because I don't really want to do a lot of animation, I decide on what key poses I want to draw. A basic standing and hissing pose should be enough. Because Raikou will move quickly and be hit by lightning, I'm not really too concerned about the in-between frames. What's more important to me is that both poses read well. I made sure to look at some reference footage for the lightning. I tested out some keyframes where the lightning affects Raikou's tail and comes out of its claws and tusks, and you can't really see these details when the lightning hits because it's so fast, but I wanted to make them work in the animation regardless. When I was checking the frames, I made this stuttering effect that I really liked, so I actually ended up implementing it in the final version. Lastly, I add some pink tinted lightning to Raikou during the strike frames. Now to import about 50 layers of this drawing to After Effects. The first thing that I usually do is start the parallax effect. You can see the full process in my Florges video, but basically it involves scaling things down at a different rate based on camera proximity, and this is what gives it this sort of like 3D illusion. For the background rain, I make a layer of turbulent noise. I stretch it vertically and animate it. Using a blending mode, it ends up looking like it's raining in the distance. A really simple way to replicate clouds is by using the tool Roughen Edges. Turbulent displace mimics the wind blowing on the cloud. This is another subtle effect, but the scene isn't really about rain or clouds, these are just sort of to build up the background. The sparks from the lightning strike were new to me. I've never tried to do anything like it, though I have used Particle World before for rain and for snow. It ended up taking me like an hour to make them work, to align and map the sparks so that they moved in the foreground, to time and color them to the lightning strike, but it was really fun and I think it was definitely worth it. Lastly, I took this video of lightning strikes on YouTube, blurred it, and added it to the background. I could have replicated the flickering of the lights and the colors, but I really didn't feel like going through the effort. I was already so tired at this point, so. I also went in later and added a bunch of effects for polishing. There's a distortion explosion, the camera shakes, the tree branches wiggle, and I also moved this little rock to the side to make it seem like it was blasted by the explosion. You can't really see it, but I still did it. The timing was also really important to figure out for me. In the first few seconds, you're meant to watch the horizon with Raikou. As lightning in the distance comes to a halt, you look at Raikou expecting something to happen. Raikou looks back and, startled, it roars. It's like a little story, even though it's super simple. Finally, the sound's added, and here's the final product.